Good morning, folks, or afternoon, whichever the case may be. Welcome to Old Ass Movie Reviews. I'm Dave, that's Scott. Today's movie is Star Trek Insurrection, starring Patrick Stewart and a bunch of other people that we know and love over the years. Jonathan Frakes,
Yes.
who I think directed it, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yes.
Brent Spiner, the ever-glorious Brent Spiner.
God,
LeVar
yes.
Burton, Michael Dorn, Gates McFadden, Marina Sirtis, F. Murray Abraham
Mhm.
plays the villain in this, and Kat asked last night, "Does he ever played a good guy?" I'm like, no, I don't know that he's ever played a good guy ever. Donna Murphy was Anij, I think is her
Anish,
name,
yeah.
the alien lady. Anthony Zerbe was the admiral, and then you had Greg Henry and some other folks bringing up the rear, as it were. Daniel Hugh Kelly, Michael Welch, and oh, come on, move over. Mark Deakins, and a bunch of other people that I'm not going to bother going through all their names because, well, they're just all character actors, and we're going to talk about the important people. Uh,
The important people. Well, let's start with that. Here we go again. Here's Jonathan Frakes directing again.
right?
Actually, when this movie starts, it is billed as a Jonathan Frakes film,
Yeah,
which, like, okay, so he obviously put a lot into this. It's not his story; it's a story by Rick Berman
right.
and a couple others. But I just want to jump to a text you sent me this morning. Is like, this is a great 2-part episode, and I'm going to
Yeah,
agree
yeah.
100%. This, to make the movie jump, I'm going to be all over the place, but to make the
Mhm.
jump from episode to movie, this one had, I won't say holes, but it needed some things fleshed out a little bit deeper to work a little bit better in a movie set, I guess is what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say. So
yeah. The sets reminded me of stuff you would have seen in the series, like the
true.
town that all the aliens lived in. It just really hit me as inexpensive, which is fine. I
It
don't mind
probably
that.
was.
Um, but where they were filming at, I'm guessing either the Rocky Mountains or out in Norway somewhere,
It
because that
looked
looked like
like the
fjords, but I
Swiss
couldn't.
Alps or somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't look to see where they actually filmed it.
I did not either.
But it's showing here that the story was by Rick Berman and Michael Piller, and then Michael Piller got the screenplay
Okay.
credit. Um, all in all, I liked it better. This is only the second time I think I've seen it,
This
because
is either my second or third. Yeah.
the first time I saw it, I did not like it at all. So this second time around, I liked it a lot more. I accepted a lot of little things for what they were, like the city, the town, and I
Hmm.
accepted it as something that should have been a two-part episode. Maybe it was, maybe Frakes and everybody were talking at one point,
It's all
and
good. See, look, just like the Hollow ship, behind you is the
yeah,
new village for the Baku.
yeah,
So,
right. Which I
okay,
did like that. I thought that was kind
yeah,
of cool. The thought of the hollow ship trying to get everybody off. I did
yeah.
figure out what was going on about halfway through.
Mhm.
There's a line that is a dead giveaway that if you're not paying attention, you totally miss. And I just happened to be paying attention this time around, when they spoke the line about the people leaving and all
Mhm.
that. And I was like, ah, okay, got it. So this movie, folks, takes place after the series. This is 1998.
Right, yeah.
I want to say, hold on, I'm going to look real quick. Do, 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 do,
Yeah,
do.
but it's
Yeah,
yeah,
1998 was the movie. So a little over an hour, hour 43 minutes, almost 2 hours.
right.
It did seem a little long, and I think on a television episode like two-parter, it would have not felt as long. It would have felt like a really good, solid story. But I'm not sure what bothers me about the story
Mhm.
anymore. Like watching it the first time, I remember thinking, "Wow, that's kind of stinky." Other than anybody, everybody knows that socialism is not going to work, and the entire federation and all that is all set on that kind of thinking. socialism. All people are going to all work for the same good. All
Well,
in paper, it works
this
great.
shows why it's not going to work.
This absolutely shows exactly why it will not work. I mean, the admiral was dirty. He was making dirty deals. The Federation was making dirty deals. I
Oh,
mean,
of
this
course they
wasn't him
were.
alone. I mean,
And
at the end, you start thinking maybe he took advantage of his situation being so
there's
far
no way he
away.
could have done
But
that without
but there's no
involving.
way. Yeah, that admiral would
Yeah.
have never gotten away with all the crap that he was getting away with. So, I guess my biggest problem is what Berman and Pillar have done over the years, or were doing for a while, is Gene Roddenberry had this, everything worked out. He never really said that they didn't use money in the
Mm-hmm.
original series. You just figured that everybody worked a lot better together. Like the
Yeah.
Russians still kind of had, like when you have Chekhov on the ship, he's talking about how the Russians would invent everything, and they were still very proud. And
Mm.
the Japanese guy was talking about Japanese, and everybody knew their own culture. So the world, though united, wasn't necessarily um, like all socialist and no money and New World Order type stuff. It was just everybody happened to have the same goal. Like, oh crap, we're going to space. Okay, what kind of job can I get? Because it was good for the economy, evidently. Um, so my problem is that they took that kind of view that the Federation and Starfleet are this really good,
Mm-hmm.
solid thing, and they started doing it in the series a little bit, showing you how dirty Starfleet could be. Um, and they really made it look bad. And I think that's what bothers me. I think they took away the good guys, and the Starfleet were the good guys. And Starfleet
Well,
should
yeah.
always be the good guys. Federation should always be the Federation. Like we are literally, unlike what Ronald Reagan said when they said, I'm from the government and we're here to
Yeah.
help. That's the worst words you can hear. When the Federation shows up, everybody's happy that they're there if they know who the Federation is. And they kind of took that away, and
Yeah.
and they did that in Deep Space Nine. I think they may have done it in Voyager a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, but they were so far away in
Yeah.
Voyager. I don't think it
Well,
really mattered.
and I get that. I get that because you've got the established good guys per se as the
Yeah, yeah,
Federation, but then you also have what science fiction is at its core is basically flipping a mirror on society and saying,
yeah,
"Hey,
yeah.
look at this." So to me, it makes it very believable that the Federation would be corrupt and everything because I guarantee they would have went for this frickin' deal.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
So,
absolutely,
but I
definitely.
do get
They
where
were.
you're coming
They,
from when we go to Star Trek. It's already established. This is the standard. This is where.
yeah.
So when you see that being chipped away, it's like, well, what's going on here? But
Then why even have them at this point?
yeah.
At that point, it's just they're the bad guys too. So the Klingons are the good guys too. The
Well, I mean,
Romulans are the
to
good
the
guys too.
Klingons, yeah, the enemy is
But
our good
But you
guys,
know
they're
what I
bad
mean?
guys. So,
Like
yeah,
you might as well just be Klingons. You might as well just be
yeah,
Romulans. So that's I think that's my biggest problem with this
I
movie
get
is
it.
it really took the little problems that I was already having and really
Mhm.
expanded it. However, with that said, I did like the story a lot more this time. And I think had they really let you know that this admiral was basically on his own, like maybe the Federation told this admiral, "Hey, go out there and see if you can work up a treaty with these people. Maybe we can work out a deal."
Yeah,
And he was just like, "Fuck that! I'm going to take this shit," kind of thing. That if they would have worked on that a little bit more, I think I would have been much more okay with it. You
yeah,
know, because then you would have you know a guy just abusing power, which
yeah.
duh, it happens. Look around. But I think that would have worked better for me in my way of wanting to see the story played out. What do you think? How do you think? Uh, does that make sense? That you
It
think they
makes
could have done?
sense. I understand. I understand your take completely, and I get other people may feel that way. For me, it doesn't really matter. I like a good sci-fi story. I
Right,
guess I've never just focused on them being the good guys. I mean, they are,
right, right.
of course, but it doesn't surprise me when I see them do something that we know that we see happen every day, and every
Yeah,
world government acts the same way.
that would really happen if they had that kind of power and
Yeah,
access
you
to.
know it. You know it. So it makes it believable. But I also, we watch movies for fantasy and to escape, and
Mhm.
you look for the good guys out there. This
Yeah,
this is like the the
that's it.
yeah.
I'm looking for the good guys, and I want my good guys to be good guys.
Want to be able to
I
know
want
who your
my
good
good
guys
fe
are.
yeah, I want my new federation, my good guy federation to be the good guys.
Yeah,
I don't want them to be the good guys, kinda, so when it
yeah,
suits them. You know what I mean? Because
mhm,
if you're only good when it suits you, you're not good.
right.
If you're only doing good while you're being filmed or watched, you're not a good person.
Yeah,
So that's I
yeah.
think that's what kind of
No, I
annoys
get it.
me.
I get it.
Um, there's
I
a lot
do
of
like
action
this
in this.
story though.
Yeah, yeah, I like the thought of the story. I did. I really
Yeah,
did. Especially when you realize how long these people have been living on this planet.
yeah,
Do you want to give the quick synopsis? Because
yeah.
I tend to start telling and going on, and my world's fallen. Both
Well, you
dogs
fix
just
your
came in
world
here.
because subspace weapons have been outlawed, David, and your tear in the space time continuum right now will not be tolerated.
And that's why we don't have subspace weapons.
Exactly. Eject the warp core. Anyway, good Lord, you wouldn't have Star Trek without destroying the Enterprise or ejecting the warp core. The two
This is the first time I
things.
think they successfully ejected a warp core,
Is it
though.
really? Maybe
I
it's
think
Janeway who
so.
would eject the warp core. I don't know.
Oh, yeah,
It's like,
maybe I gotta check that. I still haven't watched
yeah,
that entire series.
yeah. But
That's funny.
basically, this movie has a race of people called the Baku who live on a planet, and they are being. What we don't know is what's going on in the background. There's a race of people called the Sona, and
Uh-huh.
they're aligned with the Federation to harvest something out of the rings of the planet. It gets very
Yeah.
convoluted, but here's the thing: the stuff that's in the rings of the planet regenerate tissue and are keeping the Baku forever young. They're not aging anymore. They've actually
For the
de-aged to a
land of
certain
the
point. So
young. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
so they are
Yeah.
forever young, and you have basically, as we find out as the movie goes on, the uh, the Federation is working hand in hand to harvest this stuff, and they're trying to relocate the Baku. This is very
Right.
much an allegory for so many forced migrations through history, which
Yeah.
Picard points out just blatantly. I mean, here it is. This is, here's the synopsis of the movie. And
But you know what? I actually like that he did that because he's like, it's
yes,
never worked. And he goes
exactly.
through like the stuff that happened on Earth, but then he also uses some other like yeah, she's sneaking around. He also uses some other metaphorical stuff from
Hmm.
their timeline. And I
Yeah,
thought
and
that's kind of
it's Star
it
Trek.
never
Star Trek is going to give you a message. Star Trek is going to give you some moral to the story. So
right.
I expect that absolutely, and I just thought this was really well done. I mean, he just flat out said you did. There was no trying to figure out what the message was. In this one, it was very very obvious because he said it, and you usually don't see
Mhm.
that. But this is for me. Well, I'll go back to the synopsis.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what more to say without totally going through every
Well, we're gonna
section other
destroy the
than
movie.
do what? But
We're gonna
but
destroy the movie for anybody
we're
who
going to
hasn't
destroy the
seen it
movie, but it basically Picard figures it out because Data is shot, and that's how the whole movie starts off.
yet. Yeah,
It's like, what is going on? Data is um,
he's
shot
malfunctioning.
by the sonar, and it causes him to malfunction. He goes into basically a failsafe mode, fight or
Mhm.
flight, and he's fighting.
Right.
Um,
But
and
it's funny because he's fighting the Sona, the
yes,
bad guys in this movie, and he's protecting the other
the Baku.
Baku
Hmm.
because his subroutine is basically telling him, like almost like a subconscious, this is what you protect, this is what you fight,
Yeah,
and that's what he was doing. And it was,
yeah,
and then came across not just not just the Sana, but any Starfleet because he attacks the
yeah.
Enterprise, I think, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He
he
does. He
attacks the
does.
Enterprise.
So but once that happens, once Picard figures it all out and they decide to intervene and save the Baku and they spend time on the planet, this is where you got your typical Jonathan Frakes episode movie.
Yeah.
He does the camaraderie and family of this generation really well. And
Yeah.
there was so much humor packed into this. I didn't realize. I mean, seeing Worf with a zit on the side of his nose, and just
Because he's
Riker
going through puberty again.
yeah, and Riker's like, "You Klingons don't do anything small, do you?"
No,
just
yeah.
because
Just on this elevator, he's so mad. Worf is so mad.
But there's just so much humor there. Geordi gets his eyesight back, but
That was a good scene.
There's some good
that
stuff
was a
in
really
it.
good scene because I don't think Geordi had ever had any vision at all. I think
No.
he's always had whenever he could see, he always used the prosthetics.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden his eyes are healing, so the doctor takes the implants out and his eyes are completely healed. He's watching the sunrise. He's like,
For the
I've
first
never
time
seen this
ever.
before. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
You
a
know,
good
that
scene.
was a good moment. That was a really good moment.
It is a good moment.
And it's funny because this time around, I saw what was happening with the people in the room. There's a scene when Dr. Crusher and Troy are talking on the planet, and Dr. Crusher's like, "Have you noticed how your breasts are getting more pert?" And Data's just standing there listening, and he doesn't really understand what the hell they're talking about. And then they both look at him and go, "Is there something that you need?" He's like, "No, I just came by to say hi," kind of thing, and walks over. And then he brings up to Worf. I think it's Worf, where he's like, "Have you noticed how your breasts are becoming more pert?" And Worf just kind of shakes his head like, "The hell are you talking about?" But it's funny because everybody is just starting to almost revert to a younger way of thinking.
Picard, instead of the old,
especially,
yeah, instead of the old classical music, he wanted some Mamba or whatever, you know. And it's like, what's happening here?
Dancing around, and that's a good giveaway. But another giveaway that's a little bit more subtle is when Riker goes to visit Troy. He's like, "Hey, I need some counseling." He's just like a little 18-year-old horn dog.
I know, it's so funny.
And he's like, he puts his head on her lap, and he's like, they're sitting there talking, and she's playing with his neck at one point when they're really close to the planet. And that's like the first giveaway. That's the first tell that something's not right, because she's kind of playing with his neck and flirting. He goes into the room and he's flirting with her, and they're kind of flirting back and forth. And if you're not really paying attention to what's happening planet side, you just think these are the two characters that they're finally getting back together. They're
right.
after all these years, but it was the planet. It was basically de-aging them.
Yeah.
And they would have de-aged to probably in their 30s because everybody on that planet was like 30.
Yeah.
You know, they all looked about 30, 35 maybe.
Yeah. How great and they were hundreds of years.
Yeah. And they were like what'd they say, 369 years?
Something like that, yeah.
They've been on that planet. So yeah, that was pretty cool. And like this time around, I noticed it, and I started picking up on a lot of the little, like Worf, they're flirting, Geordi's eyesight, and there are other people doing stuff like in the background.
Yeah.
That you see them doing that you're like, why are they doing that? And then I was like, oh shit, they're not as mature. They're not thinking as maturely as they were.
Yeah, it was actually kind of fun.
Yeah, and that's why whenever they're flying through that cloud and they're like, well, you want to just keep going? He's like, Riker's like, hell no, we're gonna go kick their ass. You know, that was a guy that was a teenage moment. That was a screw that. I'm not gonna run anymore. I'm gonna fight back. And that was like, oh, that was good.
I've always enjoyed Riker in command.
Yeah.
And especially in the Picard series on at least season 3.
Yeah,
I'll still never forget him sending Picard to his room.
Yeah. Get off my bridge.
Oh my God. He was probably the only man who could have talked to Jean-Luc that way.
Yeah. They would have had the cojones to do it, you know?
Yeah.
But a lot of that's what's cool. You bring up Picard. A lot of little things here start fitting into the Picard series.
They do, man.
Nothing major. But like you and I had talked, like when the hell did the doctor learn how to shoot? In this, she's shooting the fuck out of everything, man. She's
We're
not
starting to
taking
see
any guff
that.
from nobody. So you're like, oh, okay, that's where she learned to shoot. She's kind of a badass already,
Yeah.
you know? So I thought that was interesting. Thought that was actually really cool.
Well,
Trying to
yeah,
think
because
what
when we got to Picard,
Troy.
Dr. Crusher was just such a badass. And it's like, well, where did she
Yeah,
learn that? And going back and looking, it's like, oh, well, she was already becoming a
yeah.
badass.
He was already running that gamut. Worf, you can kind of see how Worf started getting involved in the Secret Service or whatever the heck they
Hmm.
call themselves, Section 13 or whatever it is.
31.
Because like of all the crap that was going on here, he
Hmm.
may have looked around and went, you know what?
Dude, I would have never thought that. Holy shit.
I need to clean some shit up. I need to make sure guys like this don't get out of hand ever again. And he's old enough to where he could last a long time.
Hmm.
You know, most humans die after what, even then, 80, 90 years old.
Yeah.
Worf's gonna outlive them by 100 years.
Yep.
You know, he can keep his eye on a whole lot of shit. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. So this particular one is well, we have one more after this, but on Insurrection, I
Sure.
liked this more than I did the last time I watched it.
Yeah, yeah. I
What I
like
would
it a
have
lot
liked,
more than Generations.
yes, absolutely. What I would have liked to have seen is this could have been several episodes. You said two-part. Man,
Mhm.
there is so much here with the Baku, the descendants of the Baku,
Right,
how they become the
right.
Sona, how they've maintained staying alive all this freaking time. Not very well, mind you. Uh,
No, not well at
not
all.
very well. They're looking rough.
Uh,
Um, there's a scene in there that's kind of cool where one of them reunites with his mother.
yeah, I was gonna bring that up. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's just a minute, and it's not a close up. It's nothing,
No, they're off in
and
the
they're like,
distance. Yeah.
and everybody's talking like, no, you gotta make peace with the Sona, and the one guy's like, nah, there's just too deep. The wounds are too deep. That the hatred for
Yeah.
each other are just too deep. And then they're all looking, and one of the Sona walks up to his mother, and
Yeah.
he's been this big, rough, burly. I he's been probably the more logical out of all of them,
He
but
was. He
he's like
wasn't
like
as emotionally
you knew
driven.
this guy's killed a lot of people in his life, and he walks up to this little tiny woman that's got to be a full head shorter than him,
Mhm.
and he just puts his head down on her shoulder, and you see him just kind of sliding down her, like asking her for forgiveness. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's a
It's a
really
good
good.
scene.
And they stayed on it just long enough for you to go,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
and then
Well done.
they panned away to something else to where you're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the kid making friends with Data,
Data.
and of course, Data. I mean,
God bless
Data
Brent
steals this
Spiner.
show. Data steals this movie like he's stolen every other freaking movie. I always think Picard's like the guy. I always look at Picard and go, he's the main character. But really, when you look at it, the most interesting out of all of them is always Data. He
Mhm.
was the most interesting out of all three series, even when he wasn't there. He was conspicuous in his absence. But then you had Spiner playing all those parts in Picard. And then you see him in this, where he's definitely a machine. He hasn't quite gotten to the point where he could be a human. He hasn't evolved, but he still wants to. And
Mhm.
it's a good moment, I should say, for him with that kid when they're just playing.
Well,
They're just trying
yeah,
to
just
play.
plain. And I do like that. I like seeing how, I guess the way I've always seen Data, and this shows it even more, is he embodies the curiosity of a child. Um, always wanting to know and understand. He's striving so hard to be human. He wants to know every
Right.
aspect. And for I have to give Brent Spiner so much credit because you see Data, Data is an android. He plays
Yeah.
it to the point
Yeah.
he's mechanical. I'd swear you could crack open Brent's head and there'd be damn computer chips. But he gives just enough humanity in there that you see the spark of life in Data, and
Yeah.
that's really cool. Really cool.
And there's something more to Data than just being an android.
as we
And
see.
that's why you can be his friend. That's why you can, you
Yeah.
know, he's such a good actor, and there's the stupidest scene in the world. There is a really stupid scene in this movie, and yet it still works in a really stupid way.
I think I know
Is
which way you're going.
when they turn on the music and they start singing.
Oh, I love that scene.
That to me is just one of the most stupid, ridiculous scenes, and yet it seems to work very well in the
Yes, it
context
does.
that it's in. What scene did you think I was talking about?
Him turning into a flotation device.
That was a stupid scene too, but it was funny. It was
Yeah,
a
the thing
so
with the
stupid.
musical that Data, of course, was learning and practicing and rehearsing. That's what
Yeah,
he did. He's
yeah, why
learning things. But
yeah,
when Picard looks over at Worf and says, "Do you know Gilbert and Sullivan?"
yeah.
I haven't had
I have
time to
not had
meet the
the
whole crew.
and he looks at him like he's an idiot. No, they're composers, Worf. And he's like, Worf's like, what?
Yeah,
He has
I
no
mean,
idea where his captain's going with this.
exactly, exactly. And it's kind of
So,
neat that they have and this is believable because you think of that, it's like, well, why in that time frame, that many hundreds of years since those works, why is Jean-Luc listening to him? Why is Shakespeare still a thing? And I look, we're hundreds of years out from Shakespeare. It's still a thing.
yeah,
It's still
yeah,
great works live.
will always
And
be. Gilbert and Sullivan will always be around in some
yeah,
form or the other.
as we've seen,
Shakespeare, I think, is going to always be there,
especially in the original Klingon, would be good.
especially well, yeah, the original Klingon, of course. Um, Speaking of the original Klingon, I don't know if I mentioned this in the last in the what was that, the Final Frontier? No, not Final Frontier.
First Contact? No,
First,
yeah, no, it was the Final
was it
Frontier.
Final
Or
Frontier? Whenever they're talking about the to be or not to be, and he says it in
yeah.
Klingon, the guy who made up the Klingon language
Oh yeah, you've
had to
talked
make
about
up
this
words
because
because
they
there
didn't
was
exist.
no not. There was no word for not. Like you can't do something to be or not to be. There was no word for the word not, and he or
Yeah.
something like that. And he had to come up with, okay, now what word? How is this word going to work? And he had to go in and figure out how to how to say to be or not to be in Klingon.
I find it absolutely impressive and amazing that they did this for Star Trek. Tolkien did it for his books, is the creation of a whole new language, written and oral, for their works of art. I just find
Yeah.
that just mind blowing. And I'm sure
Well,
there's other things that have done it.
I can kind of get Tolkien because he was a linguist, but for you to do that with Klingon, and there was no real point to do it. There's no. It's not like Roddenberry was already trying to make up the language or anything at one
Yeah.
point. You know what I mean? It's somebody real that was a real geek, real nerd was like, yeah, we can do that. And
So
I know back in the late '70s, fans, and I have a fan book around here somewhere. I don't even know where the hell I got it so many years ago. That somebody was trying to make up a language for the Vulcans.
huh,
So I don't know if that. And then I had heard that they basically use Klingon and Vulcan interchangeable with each other, and it was just on how you spoke it was the big
interesting.
difference. And I don't know if that's true or not because I'm not a linguist.
Yeah.
I am nerdy enough to own the book, the translation for Klingon, traveling the Klingon book
That's
or
actually
whatever.
really cool. That's really cool, you know.
I ain't that
And
big of a
I
geek.
don't know why that just made me think of, I think it was on Enterprise. They had a linguist there. I forgot what her name was.
Mhm.
And I just remember she was somebody Yoshi or
Yeah,
I
Yoshi.
think
Yoshi
was it Yoshi? Well, see, I
on
can't say
Enterprise.
Yoshi without thinking Mario Brothers and the little green dinosaur. But
Yeah.
so it
I
probably
think
was
her name was
Yoshi
Yoshi. I'm almost sure it
or
was Yoshi.
Hoshi or I don't know. It might have been anyway. She was like a human automatic translator,
Yeah,
and if she would hear it
yeah,
and come right out, then you have like her. So there's always, it's kind of been a history of these translate linguists.
yeah.
It's
Linguist,
kind of
yeah.
neat, kind of neat. I don't know why I was just thinking of Yoshi, but or whatever her name
I
is.
vaguely remember them talking about Yoshi. when they had to meet the Klingons, and they didn't have the universal translator wasn't created
Yeah,
yet,
she had to be
and
the one.
she had to be the one to go talk to him. And then I think they pulled that in one of the newer Star Trek movies also with Uhura.
Yes,
Uhura had to go down and talk to him. I didn't like those Klingon designs. I thought they sucked.
it's
But
Hoshi.
that
It's Hoshi.
Hoshi.
Hoshi
Okay.
Sato. Okay,
Okay.
there we go.
Hoshi. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. I like the original that Enterprise series,
Mhm.
except for the opening music.
Oh, it's the
They
worst
should have changed it.
theme song in Star Trek history.
They should have changed it for the fans. If
If
worse
they'd just
comes to
taken the
worse,
vocals out, it'd been all right.
yeah,
It's not a
if
bad
worse,
song. It just doesn't fit, dude. It just
no,
doesn't
it
fit.
doesn't. It doesn't fit at all. And they knew better, and they did it just to piss on the fans, in my
And they just
opinion. Yeah, they should at that point just do what the fans want. It's a little thing. It's just a little thing.
it
Like you said,
is.
take the
It is.
vocals out,
It'd have been
and
fine.
worst comes to worst, do at least take the vocals out on the sales for the discs and stuff.
Yeah.
That's me. That's
Yeah. That
little
was
thing.
weird. And I'll always go to it. It's like, oh my God. If anybody says, what's the worst sound opening music anywhere? It's
Yeah,
Enterprise.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Enterprise. I've been watching the new, well, not the new. I've been rewatching Deep Space Nine. I'm
Nice.
I'm up to the point where what's his name has gone back to Earth, and they're looking for the changelings.
Ah,
How far have you gotten on that?
I haven't got past the first episode because you had another subspace tear. Uh, but no, I've been watching Battlestar Galactica and I'm well into the second season right now. So I'm going all the way through it again.
My,
So
my dogs just give
yeah.
zero fucks to give.
So anyway,
Sorry.
before we have another violation of treaties on Dave's end with subspace weaponry,
Space terrors and weaponry.
I
And she's just standing there staring at me. That's what's funny. She knocked me
yeah.
over. She walked out and stood there and staring at me like, "What? I didn't do
Oh
nothing."
Lord. So
Oh, she's
Star Trek 9 Insurrection. I like it better this time. It is
yeah.
a good one. It's definitely better than the next one we're going to watch.
It's a good episode. Yeah, the next one I have a lot of issues with. A lot more
And
than I do with this one.
not
Than I
many
do.
of them are Brent Spiner.
None of them are Brent Spiner.
Exactly. It's just
You
been a
know
while
what?
since I've
That's
seen
the
it.
funny thing. Like for all the shit the next generation did, I never had a problem with Data. I was always like,
No.
yeah, Data's a good character. I like Data.
Yeah.
And the more I watch him in these movies, plus with Picard, I
Oh,
I realized in Picard, I think is when it really dawned on me just how talented that guy is. Like I knew he was talented. He can
but my
sing,
God.
he can act, he can dance, he can do comedy, he can do serious. And if you ever get a chance to watch it out, I think it's called Out to Sea
You were telling me about that.
with Jack
Yes.
Lemmon and oh crap, the guy that was in Walter Matthau
Ah.
are on a cruise ship,
Oh
and he
God.
plays the cruise director. Just folks, if you get a chance to watch that, if you can find it anywhere, I don't even know if it's for sale or if they buried it, but just for Brent Spiner, watch that movie. He's such an insufferable twat in that. It's not even funny. And that's when I really
Oh,
started liking him. But to really see him in Picard is like, wow. And then we started watching these over, and I'm just like, he gets the best lines.
he
What do you
does.
think, Mr. Data, when they're all getting ready to go down and Data's like, well, you've all had this thing going on in space and it's affecting the way you think, except for me. And they all look at him, they're like, yeah, that's true. Okay. What do you think? So basically he says, let's go kick their ass, lock and load. No, he says, saddle up, lock and
Settle up.
load.
I know that was a good scene. It's
I was like, that's awesome. Basically, let's go kick their ass.
this movie feels like you said, like an episode.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird to me. You had also mentioned earlier you weren't happy with the design of the Enterprise.
I hate the design of this Enterprise. This is Enterprise E.
Mm.
Oh,
It's a little
it's
too
just
sleek.
and yeah, and there again, it goes into the whole Starfleet and the Federation are supposed to be the good guys. And I know it's kind of stupid to have families on a spaceship whenever you could go to war. I get it. The Enterprise D always bothered me in that sense. Like it should have. You're going to have families on this ship. Yeah, you're the flagship of your entire thing, right? So that kind of bothered me. But you also don't want to look like a Romulan warbird or a Klingon destroyer. And the Federation ships, to me, and I know the wars were going on. I know they had problems with Klingons, the cyborgs, the freaking Romulans, and you name them, aliens and the shapeshifters, and all those wars were going on. I get it, but I think the designer could have done a better design. Maybe sleeked out the D version a little bit more. This one just looked too military. It looked too drastic for me. That's me though. Again, it's a little thing, but it was one of those things that always takes me out. Like I love the original design, 1701. That's my jam. That ship is the one that I always want to see, and they never bring it back. And I'm like, you bastards. Who needs it? But yeah, this one was just like too drastic. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. No, I get it. Your inner nerd is showing, but that's the beauty of Star Trek. You those are things that matter to you, and those are things that may not matter to somebody else. They don't matter to me, but I can definitely understand it. I mean, we have the things that we like and what we're set on, and it's like, because my God, dude, we're in our 50s, and I can't think of a time that I didn't have Star Trek in my life.
Yeah, I can't think of a time that I wasn't watching Star Trek.
Yeah, so
the reruns, the
it's
black
a big
and white
part.
TV that's this big. Yeah. Having to change the antenna to get it to come in on channel 50 or channel 20 in Detroit. So yeah, it's tough.
It's always
to see
there.
Somebody just poop on your on your child.
Well, we have our expectations, and we love the property so much. We want it to be good, and when it's not perfect, we're mad.
See, and I had yes, very mad, especially when you get the guy's species wrong that created warp drive. But that's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, stuff like
that.
Yeah,
fine. Alpha Centauri. It's fine. I'll never forgive them for that.
And I get it. See, I didn't know that, so it's like, whatever.
Biggest problem I ever had was, and I would let them know, there, how you like them apples?
Yeah.
Came back at you, didn't he?
So
I like that.
Speaking of problems, up next, Star Trek Nemesis, the final Next Generation movie.
So many problems in that movie.
Yeah.
I think
there are some good parts. There's some good parts.
There's a lot of neat stuff. The basic overall story could have worked.
Pretty solid.
All they had to do is change one thing, and we'll talk about that next week.
Definitely.
In my opinion. That's all my opinion, folks. That's all my opinion. You can very much well have your own opinion, and thank you for letting us know what they are. Just don't call me names.
So join us next week for Star Trek Nemesis. If you like the show, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the share. Check us out on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook, and wherever you listen to podcasts. We will be there. And thanks for your comments, likes, and subscribes. Catch you next week.
Have a good one.